Good morning. We just have quorum now, and this is the Budget, Capital, and Personnel Committee for Thursday, November 14th, 2024. With us in chambers, besides myself, is Shauna Black, the Vice Chair of the committee, and Rich John. And I'm sorry? You can't hear me? Sounds like it's working. We got an email from Dominic last night saying we have to yell. I'll try to speak louder.
Mike, I apologize for coming in a little late. I didn't realize I was quorum.
No apology necessary. So I was just mentioning on Zoom is Lee Shurtleff, who will be with us as much as he can be this morning.
And is Lee able to vote?
Yes. Maury and I both decided it was borderline, so I opted on
Good.
Voter representation. Do we have any changes? Well, let's see, minutes approval. Let's do that first. October 10th, 2024. Someone want to move it? Rich has moved it. Sean has seconded it. Discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? You're voting on the minutes, Lee? Lee, are you voting on the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thanks.
We have advisory board appointments. Who do we have here? We have to the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Rachel Graham as a staff member. Moved by Shauna, seconded by Rich. Discussion, or does anybody need a executive session on that one? I think we all know Rachel. Ready to vote? All in favor? Any opposed? Let's go to, let's just say 3-1 on that. Changes to the agenda. Anything we've got to add, Brett? Okay. Are there any comments from the public this morning? No one on Zoom, no one in chambers. The Holmes, we're up to you for the County Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Mike. The only thing I wanted to report back to the committee on is after the last month's discussion, there was a request to find a presenter, speaker who could talk to us about zero-based budgeting or other forms of budgeting. I reached out to Dave Lucas at NISAC, who provided me with a few different resources, and Dave also editorialized, and most of the people I spoke with editorialized that zero-based budgeting is not really in use across the state, or it's because of the time-consuming nature of it. But at any rate, I did have a few very good discussions with a trainer. His name is Dan Aquilano. He is from the Office of State Comptroller, and he is offers training regularly as part of the state training school for municipal officials and county staff. And he also lives not far from here in Seneca County, but he works for the state. He again reiterated that true zero-based budgeting, where we're starting each budget every year with nothing, is very time-consuming. But he did talk about a lot of best practices that he sees happening across the state, and frankly, a lot of what he said in terms of best practice, we're already doing a lot of here, but he talked about a few concepts that he thought would be worth discussing with us here in Tompkins, multi-year financial planning, trend analysis, and so forth. He also talked about how he likes to proceed in having discussions on the local level, including both elected officials, legislators, and the department heads that are involved in the budgeting. So he, if we were going to ask him to come, he would like the discussion to involve the department heads that would also be involved in the budgeting process. So I had a few discussions with him, and he seemed like a very good resource because of his position at the state and his kind of bird's eye view of what local governments are doing across the state in terms of budgeting. So I think he could speak to zero-based budgeting and how it operates. I don't know that he would necessarily recommend it, but he could speak to many different aspects of the budgeting process.
Well, this is great, and I don't think any of us was saying that we want to immediately jump to something like that. It's just, I think the whole idea is for us to learn about it, and I think this sounds like a person that does training on these things and would be helpful to us. And we don't have to go down that road, but maybe he can give us some reasons why we shouldn't, or he can explain some of these other things that you mentioned. I don't know, how do the rest of you feel? Rich?
I'm happy to learn about it. I would be reticent in trying to make any change in 2025, given we're going to have a new county administrator and a new budget director, hopefully. It seems like there's a lot of change going on. We're also doing some significant revamping in our finance department. I think we'll have our hands full. So, but happy to learn about it.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I just thought of a couple of other things. For what it's worth, he did, Dan, in our conversation, said he recently did a similar training in Schoharie County, which is where our new county administrator is. So I think they probably know each other. The other is, I think it would be fantastic to, as maybe something to look at in 2025 with Corsa coming on board. And also, I know from department heads, there is a desire for maybe some more interaction with legislators. We used to, in years past, have coordinate some department head legislature retreats with agenda topics, and this might be a great topic to, in addition to discussing it at a BCP meeting, but to have this kind of interface and interaction and hear from department heads as well on their perspectives on it.
Donna?
I agree with Rich. I think the more we know, the better we could make our budget process. And we have heard from Lisa in leadership for probably 6 months, that it would make sense for the legislature to have some type of retreat with our department heads. So I would certainly be in favor of doing something like that, maybe in January or February, to just talk about our philosophy, our motto, some of our goals, mission. And, I think an important piece that perhaps over COVID has been missing is just the relationship piece, and making sure that we're building those relationships with our department's heads. We're hearing about their struggles. I know that we did one of those retreats. I don't know if it was definitely pre-COVID. I think it was at the health department. And I just remember having like the white sheets, and we wrote things on, maybe 5 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, I remember having a couple of those, yeah. Lee, any thoughts? Lee, any thoughts?
I think it'd be a good exercise, just need to get Corsa and budget officer with their feet on the ground, but I know there's been desire expressed by members to take a look at zero-based budgeting, and I think it'd be good exercise.
I would imagine that if we went down that route, it would be a lot more work in committee before we ever got to the legislature budget meetings themselves. So that's something we would need to learn about. Would want to be. How do you folks feel about this idea of a joint meeting with department heads? In my view, I don't want to make them worry that we're going to force something down everybody's throat here all of a sudden. So maybe a joint meeting with joint training would be a great idea. Rich?
Yeah, I like the idea of a joint meeting, not just for zero-based budgeting, but probably a broader agenda. And thinking back to that meeting at the health department and who was there, I think it was well more than 5 years, because there was somebody there that is not here anymore.
Yes, there is.
We were probably 7 or even 8 years out from that.
I remember at least 2, but I can't remember the topics.
Anyway, good idea.
So, Lisa, what do you think? We kind of task the new administrator with setting this up next year?
In that direction, we had a department head meeting yesterday, and I mentioned that as something for 2025, and people seemed very interested in it, so we can start laying the groundwork for that in hopefully early 2025.
Fellow that you talked with from the state?
Dan Aquilano, Aquilano. And he's from the Office of the State Comptroller.
Right office to be from. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Norma?
Wanted to, I talked to Lisa about this before too. Our software really better supports a line item budget rather than the OTR model that we have now. So while we're talking about zero-based budget, we might also add in the consideration that we kind of drop the OTR model and go to a line item budget where folks are actually asking for what they need every year, and then we address it in that way. I think the OTR, even when we work with our vendor, that concept is completely foreign to most vendors we've talked to, this extra work of adding another budget for particular over-target requests. It's more common, at least through what I learned from our vendor, it's more common for folks to put in a one line item budget for their functional unit with everything they need for that particular functional unit, and then the decisions are made based on one budget, not multiple requests. So I just wanted to kind of add that in just to confuse things more and have further conversation. But just food for thought to think about. Maybe it's not necessarily zero base. Maybe it's more like looking at a line item budget and keeping the fiscal targets the way we have them. But that would be a pretty easy shift, I think, to move from what we're doing now. It's a lot of work, both on the budget office and on the departments to prepare these over-target requests every year.
Rich?
Could you just explain that again? The departments would do a line item budget?
Just like they do, yeah. So for example, right now, they enter in their target into their base budget. Basically, you're using the base budget for everything. So if I need to add another position, within my line item budget, I'm going to add my other position right there. It's not going to be a separate over-target request. And then when the dialogue is happening with the county administrator, they're having those conversations about what they're asking for and why they're asking for more than they asked for the year before. And they make those decisions that way instead of having targeted over-target requests every year. It's just, we talked to 3 different vendors when we were deciding on OpenGov, and none of the vendors understood our model because of these over-target requests. Most people just put a note in their budgets to say, we're asking for this and this is why. I need another car.
So just a separate line?
Yep.
And then how would legislature advanced amendments happen?
Those would be added in similar. It would be an itemization within the line item budget. So let's say you all have said you want to increase the rural library budget by $10,000. We're going to go in and we're going to do that within, in the software allows for this, an itemization that says this is a legislative amendment, and all of that can be exported and printed into a book.
That's a lot of food for thought, and that's something we probably need to think about. And this could probably all be wrapped into this discussion that we're...
Right, and it's a relatively easy lift. That is compared to trying to go to a zero-based budget and ask departments to completely shift gears, this would be an easier lift, I think.
Thank you, Norma, for that information. Anything else, Lisa, you want us to know?
Oh, that's it for me, thank you.
Have we let people into the Code Blue shelter yet?
No, the prospective opening date is November 25th. A week from Monday.
What about if we're below 32 before that?
Then people can interface with Department of Social Services, and they've been utilizing Motel Partners in the meantime.
Any other questions for Lisa? Let's go to Lori Scarrett, our Director of Finance. Good morning, Lori.
Good morning. Let me see, hang on a second. Let me get my screen up here. I have some third quarter financial reports to present today. Is that where you prefer I start? Let's see, the first one I believe is casino revenue.
In our packet, it says quarter 2, but this is quarter 3, right?
Well, that's the thing. Casino revenue is really quarter 2. They're delayed in the reporting to us. So the reports that I'm presenting for casino revenue only today is through the second quarter, through June. Oh, now I just lost it.
Yeah, the numbers you're showing, the comparison year-to-date actual versus budget. Budget is for the whole year, is that correct? So we're ahead if trends continue.
Correct. So for the second quarter through June, we received $631,000 in total. For the first 2 quarters of the year, we're at $1.2 million, which is 58% of the budgeted amount. Correct. And if you look at the casino revenue by casino, you can see it's trending relatively flat with a slightly upward curve.
What did we put in the budget for 25 for casino revenue? What was our estimate?
2.1 million.
Okay, thanks.
Lori, I wondered, do we get any of the sports betting money yet, or at all? Or is it just out of the casinos?
I'm not sure. The report that we get doesn't differentiate the money by topic, like it doesn't break out sports betting, so it only labels it as commercial gaming. So I'm not sure on that.
Sports betting is, articles I've been reading lately, is really pernicious, and they're starting to worry again about gambling addiction because it's so easy to gamble online. And I know when we first started getting casino revenue, our initial questions was, should we be using some of it for doing something to deter or to help people that do have gambling addictions. And when we talked to people, mental health and otherwise, they find that we had a lot of people that had those addictions. I think we probably ought to keep it in mind if we're going to have a lot more of this online gambling.
I can do some digging to see if the sports betting is included in the revenue report that we get, but I don't know the answer today.
Expanding now to more than sports, they do card gambling and all kinds of things now that personally I'm sorry to see it all happening, but I guess that's the trend. Rich?
I'm wondering if our health department might have information on reports of gambling addiction, because you're right. Certainly on sports on television, professional football, it's just relentless. And the number of celebrities that are participating in shilling for this is remarkable to me. But I would be surprised if we didn't see more people with gambling trouble.
I think that's a good thought, Rich. Let me maybe consult with, well, it's Shauna, it's your department, right? Your committee, maybe
Yeah, no, I have
out
not.
with Frank.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm on the Board of Health, and Randy's actually on the Community Services Mental Health Board. My guess is that it would be considered mental health related. So I'm happy to loop him in as well and see if there's been an uptick in people that are suffering from that.
Okay with the gambling?
Okay, next is sales tax revenue for quarter 3. And as always, I like to share with you the information from the New York State Comptroller's Office, and this is for third quarter through the end of September. And he states that the local sales tax collections are growing more slowly than they were in the pre-pandemic period. Given this lower year-over-year growth, local officials should temper their expectations for future sales tax revenue. With the third quarter's 1.4% year-over-year growth, the lowest quarterly increase since the pandemic-induced declines. And I think he also stated the third quarter's modest increase in sales tax collections marked the 6th consecutive quarter of year-over-year growth below the pre-pandemic rate. The counties and cities in the rest of the state outside of New York City grew 1.5% over the year, which was a relatively modest growth. And it was the largest quarterly increase all year outside of New York City. County collections in aggregate grew 1.4% in the third quarter, with 34 of 57 counties outside of New York City seeing an increase. So with that, our results, you can see, I hope, on the screen that we had a slight decrease overall, minus 0.79%, just under 1%. And that flows for the county share. The municipalities saw a 1.2% decrease, and the city of Ithaca a 0.31% decrease.
We're bucking the trend statewide then, right? Because the comptroller's saying most counties went up,
Correct.
went down.
Correct. The next screen shows where we stand compared to the past 3 years, and as we have been trending pretty much the entire year, we are following very closely to 2023 actuals. And I think that's all I had.
Wondered, that language was pretty tempered that the comptroller gave you there. Is that somehow passed on to the towns and villages and city, that same language, so they can?
This is the report that he puts out. It is on his website, on the comptroller's website. There's a monthly sales tax report that he puts out. It's public information to everyone.
Must send sales tax report to towns and villages? Or what do we do?
We send them their share of the distribution.
That language along with, I just think that's a good warning to folks. Rich?
It looks like we're very close to on trend to hit our budget for the year. I mean, typically the fourth quarter is better than the others, right, because of holiday purchases. Do you have any estimate what we've done in prior years in the last quarter that we could, like, we don't see the,
So if you look on the second sheet shows you each quarter for the past,
okay,
21 was 11 million, 22 was 11.7 million, 23 was 11.5 million. Is that what you're asking me?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Okay. Yeah, those are lower than I thought they would be, but it does seem that the trend is, the end of the year is stronger than the beginning.
Yes, that is correct. Hope so.
Other comments, folks? Lee, I'll just mention that when we're sharing screen, you're very small on the screen, so if I miss you, holler out.
Okay, the next report is the contingency account. I will remind you, this is as of September 30th, to keep in line with our third quarter reporting. And you can see that the budget, we're just a little bit less than half on the budgeted amount, and the remaining balance available at contingency at 9/30 was $714,000. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the amount we spent. The remaining balance is $817, sorry about that. $817,405. I will let you know that as of October 31st, that balance is $557,281 for a more updated figure. In October? It looks like we spent $10,000 on highway fleet and $250,000 on, it says Tompkins County Share TC3 budget. I believe there's a bunch on the agenda coming through this week. And mm-hmm. I didn't add it up. I just saw there were several hitting contingency this time. So I guess as you go through your meetings, just be mindful.
Yes.
So this one might make you happy. A little bit better news. Adult use cannabis tax for the third quarter skyrocketed out of the park. So you can see we're doing very well in recovering for some slow times. This is the reporting period June through August, and if we compare that to last year, we're very close. So apparently that's the cyclical time for cannabis use, is the summer. And the next page just shows you that the total cannabis use in a line graph.
I think some of the dispensaries closed down.
That could be, I'm not really familiar, but we are sharing with the city of Ithaca and the town of Dryden now, also.
Rich?
It seems like this is good news, but it also seems like when these are up and running, this is not going to be a significant revenue source. So, something, but not.
I will restrict my editorializing and just thank you for the report.
Okay, the next one is the cash and investment report. So the first pie graph shows the cash balances by bank. We continue to have the largest balance at Tompkins Community Bank. And this breaks down by investment type. And I do want to point out that it appears that our checking is super high and your New York class is super low. And as you know, this is a picture point in time, and we did a major investment in CDs. And when you invest in CDs, you have to put it in the bank to get it out of the bank. So we had to take it out of New York class and put it into Tompkins so that we could then invest in the CDs at various banks. This particular day, the last day of September, that money was sitting in the checking account. The next day, it's in CDs. So there's over $25 million in additional CDs that are not showing up here. So you could subtract that from the checking and add it to the CDs. So you'll see that reflected on next quarters, but unfortunately, I didn't want to change the figures from the actuals, but that explains why it looks the way it does.
Can you tell us how long the CDs are for and what the rate was?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, okay, I think that's the next slide. The rates by type of investment. I don't have it listed out which one's which, but the shortest one is 3 months and the longest is 18. And there's a varying all over the place on them. So as you can see on here, we're getting some pretty decent rates on the CDs. We're trying to ladder those out so they come due at different times and trying to preserve as much as we can these higher interest rates while we can continue to get those in the anticipation of interest rates going down. We did, you'll notice down on the money markets, we've got a couple of stronger rates on there now as well, 4% and 3.44%. We had some meetings with our local banks, and they have increased some of the money market rates for us. I also had a meeting last week, and Tompkins has agreed to increase one of the checking rates for a very large checking account that we have for the capital projects as well. But that just happened this last week, so you'll see that on the quarterly one next quarter. Sure. This shows the next slide shows the monthly cash balance over time. And you can see it's up, down, all over the place month to month, but the trend line is going down. As we've talked about, that's due mostly to the ARPA funding. We had ARPA funding in the past that we're keeping those balances fairly high, and as that gets used up, the fund is coming back down. And the next one is our monthly interest earnings. And again, that kind of follows the interest rates and the balances that we have on hand at any point in time. But the trend line from 23 to current is going up as we would anticipate. The interest rates have been going up in that time period. So any questions? I'm happy to. Oh, I do have one more, sorry. So our budgeted interest earnings at $1 million, we have exceeded that this year. We're currently at 2.7 million as opposed to the $1 million that we had budgeted. And that is as of September 30th. Any questions on that?
Advance, and are we seeing interest rates on from the banks going down, or are they staying the same?
Yeah, New York class has already started to decline. They were up over 5%. They're now down just under 5, about 4.7. And the CDs, especially the longer term rent ones, are definitely going down.
Because I know mortgage interest rates have not been going down, they've been going up. I think there's propagating over.
Maybe. And I think that's all my reports. I will give an update on the in-rem foreclosures. As of 11/6, we have 35 residential, 35 vacant commercial, and 2 installments in default for a total of 72 properties in the in-rem foreclosure process.
Probably much too early to decide whether any of them are owner occupied at this point. Or occupied, I guess.
I don't have that information today. Yeah.
Questions for Lori? Lori, a very thorough presentation. Thank you.
Are we going to have this discussion?
How do I get that off of there? How do I get that off of there?
In EBC meetings and in meetings of this committee, there's been some disquiet about not being able to get better idea of our fund balance, potential fund balance for a year earlier than we have been. And Lori has explained to us some of the difficulties in doing that. And I promised the committee we'd bring this back for further discussion, and I've talked a little with Lori about it. And Lori, if we were to try to make some improvements there so we could get some better figures earlier in the year, what kind of building blocks do you need to move this ahead?
Thank you. Yes, there would be several. First thing we would need to do is work with the departments to understand what information they need to send over to finance and what time frame they need to send that. So I'll give you an example. When they do a state aid claim, for example, and they should be doing that fairly, I would say, within 2 weeks after the end of the quarter, and then sending that claim to us so that we can record that on the books. That would show up as revenue coming in and accounts receivable that is due to us. So that would be one example. A second foundation that we would need would be to implement a process whereby all purchases would go through a purchase order process. That would require, I would anticipate, more staff in the finance office because we would have a huge number of purchase orders to approve. And I would anticipate that some departments would also need additional staff to get them all entered into the system. But what that would allow us to do would encumber the expenses that at time of order or anticipated order or time of contract so that we can get a better estimate of what is being spent. It would also improve your year-to-date budget reports when you look at year-to-date actuals. If we don't have that information, you don't have that information. And it also would help us with cash flow forecasting because right now we don't know what has been ordered or contracted for until it's paid for, till we actually get the bill and it's paid. It's up to
Go
you.
ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I'm confused. How are departments buying things? Are they not preparing purchase orders? How are they doing it?
Okay, so currently the policy is, they follow the procurement policy, which requires over a certain dollar amount, depending on the type of procurement that it is, to be a PO. So typically, it's your big dollar purchases that are done on a PO, but anything else, which could be a multitude of lots and lots of little things, and some of them not quite so little, are just purchased. So they purchase it,
Card or
it could be a P card, it could be they had a contract and they're going along their business, and then when we get the invoice to pay the bill, that comes over to our department to be paid, and at that point, it gets posted on the system. So there could be months that go in between from the time they incurred the expense till the time it's paid, depending on what it is, and you don't know that when you're looking at your year-to-date budgets, and I don't know that when you ask me for fund balance estimates.
putting aside the question of finance department approval, because there's no approval now because you don't even see it at all.
Right.
It seems like it would be a significant improvement just for you to have knowledge that you'd see it. And I'm curious, aren't they working on the same financial platform that you are? Where are they recording their department budget?
The budget,
Running Excel sheets? What are they doing?
no, the budget is in the financial platform.
So, but when they're sitting, say, over in the highway department and they say, we got to go buy some tar, what do they physically do in their computer system? What are they entering there?
They're not entering anything when they order it. It's getting entered when we get the bill to pay for that.
There's no
said tar.
financial record of any kind when they're buying things.
Unless they're keeping a spreadsheet on their own, there's nothing that comes to finance to know what they've ordered or bought, unless it's over the dollar amount and they're required to do the PO.
I don't mean to be difficult here, but it sounds like a department head could just try to maintain the numbers in their head. Is this what they're doing? What are they doing?
That would imply that department heads are kind of flying blind in terms of
Right.
they are following their budget as set for the year and utilizing either, we're trying to utilize OpenGov as the platform, the common platform under which, and OpenGov connects directly to EFIN Plus.
So if they were entering stuff into OpenGov, you could see it.
OpenGov is getting its information from EFIN Plus. So unless it's entered in EFIN Plus, it's not going to OpenGov for actuals, for year-to-date actuals.
And plus,
EFIN Plus is the accounting software.
have visibility to that.
Yes, and that's where
And do
I'm,
the departments have that?
yes, they do.
And are they entering in even plus or not?
The information when they purchase said tar only gets entered into that system when it's paid. So that then flows to OpenGov.
So until they get an invoice and say, pay this, there's no record that they ordered it. We have no knowledge that they've encumbered.
The finance does not know
The
that.
finance
But-
department
But
does.
somebody at the department knows, and they're putting the information somewhere. Where is that? That they've encumbered their budget. They're not just trying to remember it, right? They're entering it somewhere. Where is that done? And I'm sorry to be stupid here.
No, it's a great question. It depends on the department and and their system. What we have attempted to do in the last few years is curb the need for all of the extraneous spreadsheets that have been needed to be used for tracking and centralize into these two systems, the OpenGov, EFIN Plus. Norma, do you want to speak to any?
But to Lori's point, though, is if we're not encumbering the funds, we're not seeing it in any platform because it is something that's been ordered. I'm sure you're going to go there, but it's some of the issue too, is that the systems don't allow their P cards to speak to our financial system either. So when folks are using their P card, they can't really encumber the funds, and we have to just pay it once it comes in, and that's a huge bill that as I understand it. I know Lee had his hand up, and I know he's
Yes,
been
I wanna
here.
go to
He's
Lee.
been
Yeah,
here
I wanna
long
hear
enough
from
to
Lee.
know, or to remember when every year, the beginning of the year, that we had to create a purchase order to show if we're planning to pay $5,000 in paper, we had a PO. If we had the PO, Lori would know how much is planned. And the same was true for everything that we purchased, all commodities, everything had to be done through a PO. It's shifted since back then, I think due to the P card and again, our software doesn't speak. The software systems don't speak, and I think that's a module probably that Lori's going to need as well to make everything speak to each other.
Put
Right.
money in the budget for software. Will that allow,
So that's not for this,
Speaking?
not for this. So what we would also need, another building block, is to purchase the procurement module for EFIN, our accounting software. And we would need to develop a field PO process whereby we could then I want to say, create a PO. It's not really going out to the vendor because we're purchasing it on the P card, but it would be recorded in the system as a PO. So we would be able to visually see that.
I want to get Lee. Lee's been waiting.
I think Norma just really captured what I had to say, that there's been a significant change since I was in the department head ranks, but that's been 5 years, Mike, plus, and, or almost. And, yeah, the use of the P card is significantly increased from where we were. You know, in the old days, I hate to put it that way, you encumbered encumbered about 90% of the budget in January and had a good tracking mechanism for just about every expense. But I can also see the difficulty on the grants, especially if they're tied to salary lines, which are, you know, the larger part, and you may not bill until after the expenditures have been made. And I'm not sure how, without some enhancements, how that tracking could be done, because there'd be some wild swings many quarters into some of that period. So I understand Lori's frustration, but the P card situation clearly has changed the tracking dynamics. That's all I've got to say.
Anna?
I feel like if there's something that we're not doing right this year, and if it would help to go forward with the procurement module, I mean, I guess the question is why wouldn't we go ahead and go forward with that? Either start it this year and use contingent fund money, or even next year and use fund balance?
I think we could certainly, I would appreciate that, absolutely. I think I'm in a little bit of a rock and a hard place in that when you implement new software, it requires setup and testing and rollout and training. And I am already so short-staffed that to just keep the day-to-day work up and add these on is a bit overwhelming. So I would like to take things in steps, baby steps, as we continue, I hope, to increase the staffing in the finance office. But I would recommend the first step as being the first building block that I mentioned, and that is just really working with departments to get the information, even if it's, you know, an email they're sending us that we can key in to estimate that encumbrance or estimate that revenue, so that we can start to develop that mindset of timely information being given to finance. Understand initially it would probably not be 100%. It would be as good we can get. And then work on starting to implement the POs in our current system. Start doing that in baby steps, not day one, every single purchase, because you're going to, I think we would have a lot of anxiety surrounding that, both on the finance department and outside departments. So maybe we reduce the number. Right now, I think the number is $20,000 for a PO. Reduce that down. Maybe it's everything over 10, and just start to baby step into that, rather than overhaul the entire thing out of the gate.
Rich?
If we followed that intermediate pathway, next budget cycle, would you be able to tell us what our fund balance is in August?
I don't think I could tell it in the time frame that you want it.
With, you said EFIN, this module, and if we enforce discipline across our departments, would you be able to tell us?
I think it would still be a slippery slope, but it would be closer because it's not 100%, and I can only depend on what I'm getting.
I guess I'm going back to the discussion we had several months ago where the response was, it's impossible. And I don't think we can go through another budget cycle reasonably saying that we can do that.
Well, I'd like to just, in all due respect, my opinion
Please.
is that fund balance should not be a budgeting tool. Your fund balance is a measure of fiscal sustainability, fiscal, I guess sustainability is the best word for that. It's a measure and a point of time, and it is an important number, but I don't think it should be part of your budgeting process. If you're following the policies that you have in place, and we're setting aside money in reserves, and we have extra money in the fund balance that, per our policies, we can allocate to either reserves or to the budget or whatever, and you let those policies work themselves out, your fund balance is taken care of. I don't feel it should be a budgeting tool, so I kind of feel like the focus is not the top priority.
I would disagree with that. We just went through a budget process where we were told we have no money because we can't determine what our fund balance. It was a definite factor in our budget, and it will be next year. Whether ideally it shouldn't be, it is. And the idea that we don't know what our fund balance is when we need to know, if we can fix that, I wish you would ask us for the module. I'd love to know what a price is on this. As Shauna said, let's talk about contingency. Even if we get the module and we ease into using it, but the idea that we just don't get it and we try to do spreadsheets for another year doesn't seem like a reasonable pathway. But I'll stop. I see Lee has his hand.
Lee?
Just a question for Lori. Maybe terminologies are part of the issue. We talk about fund balance, and I think prior to your giving the lesson on it there a few weeks back, would it be more apt to talk about what type of a surplus you're headed towards through the year? If your revenues are exceeding budget, if you're projecting them higher, if your expenses are coming in lower, is that a better way to possibly to hit at budget time and say, we're going to end up beyond what we had planned going into fund balance, what we'd planned on going into contingency, whatever else. But yeah, we're going to end up with $4 or $5 million above what was projected, or we're going to end up maybe personnel expenditures and exigent circumstances. Is that a more accurate way to look at what flexibility there might be at budgeting time?
My recommendation would be to allow your policies to guide this process. So at year end, we look at the fund balance that is given to us. If there's extra, we follow the policies that you have authorized, and we may put some of that extra in reserves. We may be able to use it for budget, and as part of the budget process, we can say, here's money in reserves you can use for your budget process. Here's money that was excess fund balance after we've allocated it to the reserves appropriately. Here's how much you have to spend. And it's really not, so I guess to your point, it is sort of a surplus designation, but if throughout the year we're following our policies and putting money aside and then using that money, maybe it's a mind shift from, instead of looking at fund balance, we should be looking at reserves. What can we use our reserves for? What can we use unassigned fund balance things, committed fund balance things that you've already sort of allocated to. Look at those things, not the focus on fund balance itself. Because again, part of that is not just revenues and expenditures, it's accounts receivable and accounts and liabilities. What do we owe everybody? That's never part of the discussion. What have we claimed and is showing up as revenue, but we haven't received that cash yet? There's lots of variables that go into that fund balance discussion, and we can agree to disagree, but I don't feel the fund balance should be a budgeting tool in the way that it's being used today.
Is that an old hand, Lee?
An old hand.
Shauna?
policy. We're making policy based on what is sustainable and what is smart accounting for future years. And so once we've met that, what did we say, 20% of our budget into fund balance or whatever that magic number was, once we've met that, there's a point where it doesn't matter if we have 40 million or 22 million in the bank. Like, we shouldn't be tapping into that unless we're doing capital stuff, unless we're doing like future investment, future planning. I guess my question / concern is, like, if we're always just trying to keep our head above water, and, you know, I do hear you loud and clear that you're concerned that your staff are overtaxed and that you can't start something new because you just don't have the people. Maybe you don't have the bandwidth to supervise even more people. Like, how are we ever going to get ahead? How are we ever going to change the process that is kind of working, kind of not working? You know, could we hire a program assistant to roll out the software? Like, I think we're all looking to provide a different system that's going to work better and that's going to help everyone in the county, instead of, you know, because I can imagine us having this exact same conversation this time next year and saying, damn, I wish we would have done something different. So, you know, would it be helpful to do a program assistant or a part-time employee or something to get that software up and running?
I would love to have that software. It would help us in so many ways. But I don't know how we can take that on at this moment. I think we can work toward it. But again, you can hire whoever you want. I don't know where I'm going to put them. I don't have, you know, we're going to start doing our work in the car. I don't know where I'm going to put people, and I don't know. I mean, we can try it, but I hate to say, yeah, let's do it, let's jump in, and then I can't deliver.
These are all good points. Lori, did you get through the things you wanted to tell us about?
I believe so. I mean, Norma had the great segue into the next foundation would be to purchase the procurement software module, and then look at the FPO process. We are currently looking at changing the platform that we currently use with our vendor in order to obtain better reporting. But again, it's after the fact. It's not real time. And I guess that's it, unless there's other questions.
Well, this has been a lot of great food for thought and discussion. Thank you for the preparation here, and so that we can be thinking about this. The one we probably didn't plan to talk about, but which I think we ought to talk about, is space. We're not going to have a new building for years. And, you know, do we need to lease some space for expansion of departments? It's not only the finance, but human resources and administration and others that are pretty tight. But I know there's some office buildings that aren't too far away that maybe we ought to say, well, we got to bite the bullet and lease some office space. I know that administration has tried not to have to do that, but legislature keeps wanting to add positions, and where do you put them? And we can't have people in areas that they can't work comfortably. And so we have to think about that. Lisa, I know you think about it, but I wanted to raise it and say maybe we ought to bite the bullet at some point here. Okay, so next steps here. I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
At that point, I believe this was a topic that the Downtown Facilities Committee maybe was going to take up, but with the vacating of the Alcohol and Drug Council from the Mental Health Building, 5th floor, we have some unused space in that building that we have not yet filled, and so there may be a need for some interim consideration of shuffling of departments to fully utilize some of the space downtown.
Good point, and unfortunately we aren't having a meeting this month of downtown facilities, I guess, so it's going to have to wait for next month. Rich?
If you have it, what would be the cost for that module? Ballpark?
So I'm not sure which module you're referring to. Implementing POs for all purchases, we already have. We just have to set it up.
Okay.
Purchase the procurement module, I'd have to get a quote. I don't know what that cost is.
Do you know what the other module, what kind of price range are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know for the P-card module what that would be. I'd have to get that quote.
Spent on modules, I guess was my question. Other modules. I'm trying to get some sense range.
The modules that we currently have was here before me, so I'm not sure what was spent on them, but I'd guess just on software, I would say it's probably in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, but
Okay.
I don't, that's a
Why
guess.
don't we let Lori have some opportunity to try to answer that question that she doesn't, she's telling us she doesn't have that information right now. Okay, so how do we start the interface of your department with the department heads that you talked about at the
Thank you.
purchase offers and things like that, that you said you really wanted to work with them? Or do you want to work with them individually, or?
So what we've talked about, I think we've talked about it here, and I've talked about it with my staff, and we are currently working on is setting up a quarterly, what we're going to call a fiscal group meeting. And the fiscal group meeting, department heads are certainly welcome to attend, but it's really more geared for the staff in those other departments that do financial type work. So helping them understand what we're looking for, what we need, how to get it to us, and when to get it to us. So we have our first quarterly meeting set up for December 2nd. And each meeting, we will have a topic of discussion, kind of to educate and roll this out. The first meeting on December 2nd, we will be covering year end. There is a pretty significant delay of when we get the year's information. We send out a year-end letter and ask for it by the February, I can't remember, mid-February, and we were still getting it in May of last year. So I think by working with the department staff and educating them on why we need it, how they can get that information, will be a great first step.
So you've already started, it sounds like. That's great. Other comments? Thank you. This has been very, very helpful. Let's go to Ruby Pulliam, our Human Resources. Good morning.
Right one this time, instead of the light. Just real short, brief announcements. Open enrollment ends November 15th, which is tomorrow. And HR is in the process of preparing for the year-end resolutions, which includes all new
A
positions.
little hard to hear you.
Includes all positions
Better.
authorized through the new budget, and any positions that have, the hours have increased or decreased throughout the year. There are a couple of administrative level searches that are ongoing, including the budget director and now the communications director. So we're just trying to tie up any ends and fill any gaps throughout the year.
On the communications director search, I'd like us to be able to review the job description on that, because that became a significant change from the previous public information officer position, and I know there's been some discussion among legislators about that. So we'd like, if we could have a copy of that sent to us, maybe to all legislators.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions we have for Ruby this morning? All right, let's move on. I don't have a formal report this morning, and I'm told that we aren't going to have any Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee update. Veronica did call in and advise us that. So we got a lot of resolutions. We got one very important one, which is the last one. I don't want to run out of time, so I'm going to move that up, and let's start talking about that one. Resolution J, adoption of the 2020-25 Tompkins County Budget and 2025-2029 Tompkins County Capital Program. Do I get a motion on that? Motion by Rich, seconded by Shauna. All right, let's talk about it. This is the one that was adopted, recommended by the EBC committee. It was adopted as a tentative budget by the full legislature, and now we need to move it ahead to be approved. We've had a public hearing on it. Do we have any discussion about this at this point? Rich, who's up first?
I think I just wanted to know, so once this committee, assuming that it passes out of this committee, it will go to our full legislature in Tuesday's meeting? And then if there are amendments in Tuesday's meeting, if they're not major amendments, we can vote on it. If there are major amendments, would it have to go back to public hearing?
No. Am I right about that, Maury? I probably should have turned to you and asked that, but we've never had to go back to public hearing before when we made amendments I can think of. Rich?
Yeah, I anticipate there will be an amendment regarding the assessment department and a GIS position. I'm not aware of others, but we could see some others. With that said, I think this was a surprisingly difficult budget process. You know, even the pandemic years, that hit in the beginning of the year, so we did a mid-year adjustment, and then the ARPA money came in, or whatever it was, the rescue money, not ARPA, but whatever it was. This was real pain, and we caused real pain to a lot of the agencies and departments that we depend upon to provide public services. You know, struggling through that, I think this was a reasonable compromise. Lee, I know you have opinions about the adjustment we made to bring the levy down, and you thought it should be more. I was surprised you didn't bring that second amendment to test that with the full legislature, and maybe that will get tested, but you know, I moved the motion to bring it to 3%, and you know, again, I don't think it's optimal. I think it's a reasonable compromise, and looking at what the Ithaca City School District did in their budget and what the city is doing, it seems like we're being far more prudent. And if we look at the trend over the last 4 years of a total of 5% increase in the levy, you know, we've done pretty well. So anyway, I will support.
Lee? Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I appreciate Rich's comments. I'll support it here today to move it to the legislature, knowing that there may be some further amendments. And, you know, I'm not quite there yet, as you can guess, but I do want to look at a few more things. And you know, and some of the questions that we were just asking of Lori and how to analyze the budget trends, that's still on my mind. But, you know, I'll support it to move it forward and know that there's probably more conversation from several more people. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Lee. Shauna?
Just one more thing, just to sorry about that. Just to clarify, is that our county is not broke. You know, like whenever we talk about a hard budget year, what that means is that we've expanded our operations, we've expanded the amount that we're spending in our county. we've tried to fulfill all of the needs very completely over the past 5 years, and that's taken money. And over the past few years, we've had ARPA funds to backfill those needs. And for us moving forward, I think all of us realize in the background, we have a center of government, we have a jail, we have a public safety building, we have all these things that are kind of in the background that we know we're going to have to spend a lot of money on. And so with that in mind, we had to hunker down a bit, and we had to make some cuts and some hard decisions. And we also, it was kind of a checks and balances of sorts as far as I'm concerned, because it helped us look at programs, positions that maybe we had funded 5 years ago or 10 years ago that we're not utilizing fully, or our community's not utilizing fully. And I think it was actually a pretty good exercise of us asking our community partners, us looking within, and really having the hard questions of how can we be frugal with our expenses? How can we buckle down a little bit? And so I've been a legislator for 7 years, and 6 of those years, we've had, I don't want to say pretty easy budgeting, but we haven't really had a whole lot of hard decisions. And this was the first time that we've had to really say no. And I think for all of us, it's difficult because we're letting someone down, and it's never easy to feel like you're not providing everything you can. But I'm glad that we reached, I think some consensus on this budget. I think the 3% increase is doable. Unfortunately, I think the tax increases from the city and our school taxes are really what's harming people out there.
I would just say that I think this budget helps keep the county fiscally strong. And I think based on the results of the election a couple of weeks ago here, that it's so important that we do maintain our fiscal stability. We're used to the state dumping on us. Think of the Medicaid FMAP stuff that we've had to absorb. That we just know we're the poor relation of the state, and we get the mandates unfunded. The federal government can do things that will hurt our people, and they're going to be looking to us. I'm very worried about Medicaid, SSI, and other programs that may shift the burden to folks that need our assistance through social services or medical or through our department of our whole health department, for example. And we don't know what's going to be out there. We may not get as much funding for things like airports and for highways and things that we've had in the last 4 years. So I certainly support this. I think, as you say, Rich, it was a compromise. I would have rather seen it slightly higher, but it makes sense. And where it shows our commitment to our employees and to our taxpayers, and I think that's pretty important. Anyone else? Are we ready to vote? Let's do a roll call. Shauna? Yes. Rich?
Yes.
Lee? Lee?
Yes.
And I'm voting yes. Thank you. That moves that on to the full legislature. Now let's go back to the other resolutions. We'll start with the budget adjustment, county administration appropriating unused American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funding to support the Tompkins County Fleet Management Program. Someone want to move that? Shauna, seconded by Rich. Discussion. All right, let's vote. Shauna? Yes. Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I vote yes. B is Budget Adjustment, County Administration appropriating American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funding for purchase of replacement vehicles. Someone want to move that one? Rich? Seconded by Shauna. Discussion? We'll vote. Go ahead, Rich.
Just to be clear, these have long been in the process, and what we're doing is making sure we're allocating the money and spending it before the time runs out.
They've been through other committees. Okay, Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I vote yes. C is appropriation from Contingent Fund, County Administration, funding for Community Recovery Grant Program Administration. And we get a motion for that one? Rich? Seconded by Shauna. Discussion on this one. All right, will you vote? Shauna? Yes. Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Yes. We're doing great. D, Whole Health Department, Nurse Practitioner and Psychiatry Title, salary increase. Someone want to move that? Rich moves it. Is there a second? By Shauna. Discussion on that one. Shauna?
Ask if this was going to be a full-time position?
I believe it already is a full-time position. It's on the books as redlined, yeah.
Psychiatrist? Or it's the existing one? Okay.
Clarify that they too receive the negotiated salary increases by white collar, because they're redlined, they've fallen outside of the regular process.
Redlined.
Certain positions that are somewhat unique or difficult to fill, they have been in past years redlined because they've fallen outside of the salary schedule in order to attract, recruit, and retain. No, it's not. It's a term where these positions have, the salaries for certain positions do not equate with our normal salary scale, so they've been taken out and.
What's our own term?
Yes.
And I believe it's, whenever we do redline a position to pay more, that's a legislature vote. Norma?
I just want to point out, too, that these were positions as we were going through that, because they were unknown as increases, they were not included in the original plan for salary increases as we were going through the budget process. So I think we're fine. I just wanted to kind of put that on notice in case I do have to come back and ask for some additional funds.
Anything else? Shall we, okay, well, let's just go ahead and vote. Shauna?
Yes.
Yes.
Lee stepped away. I vote yes. That passes. The next one is another psychiatrist title, salary increase, Whole Health Department, ID 1286. That one. Rich, seconded by Shauna. Discussion. Similar to what we just heard.
It looks like
The halftime equivalent.
okay.
Lee's back. Okay, are any question, we're on E, Lee, any question on that?
No.
All right, let's vote. Shauna? Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I'm a yes. F is authorization to disperse funds, county administration, ID 12834. Someone want to move that one? Rich? Seconded by Shauna. Discussion on that one. one we do every year, isn't it? Vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Now we're at G, authorization to participate in various contracts let by any government entity of the United States of America. Someone want to move that? Rich, seconded by Shauna. This lets us take advantage of other contracts that have been let out for bidding for lower prices. Similar to the state contract, but we're not limited to state. Ready to vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I'm a yes. H is authorization to sign drafts, which are checks from the county administrator, to the county administrator. Who's moving that one? Lee? Let's have you move one. Thank you.
Okay.
Seconded by Rich. Discussion? All right, Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I vote yes. I is authorization for finance director to make year-end transfers, appropriations, and budget adjustments as required. Who wants to move that one? Rich? Seconded by Lee. Discussion.
This is the big one.
Okay. Let's vote on this. I'm sorry, Shauna?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. What else have we? Maury, anything you'd like to tell us about?
No, I have nothing to add.
Okay, I guess we're going to wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks to Brittany, and thanks to Rob up in the control room, and everybody who's here.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.